Welcome, everyone. What a delight to see such a full house this afternoon. Thank you very much for coming out. And to those of you who are tuning in via the Zoom option, apologies that there's some difficulty with the visual part, but you should be able to hear the audio clearly, I'm hoping. And I think there's somebody in the back row who's going to just raise a hand if there's difficulty with the audio. Yeah, thank you. So readers are going to pay attention to that. Here's the order of events. Susan Garrett will be introducing Steffi. She will read for her part, and then we'll introduce Susan. And afterwards, please mingle to visit and have refreshments. Thank you so much for coming out today.
I am so excited to look out and see what is such a wonderful audience. Thank you for telling me to move to the side. I'm honored to, this afternoon, to introduce Stephanie Schamess, although probably a lot of you already know her. Steffi now lives in Ohio, closer to her kids, but she considers herself a New Englander at heart. And New England is sad that their talented daughter has moved. But our loss is Columbus's gain. Steffi has already started up a writing group at her senior housing complex. She didn't waste any time. She says she's been in Robin's workshop for more years than she can remember. She and we are so grateful to Zoom because she's been able to continue her involvement from afar. Aside from her many friends, I am super excited to see Calvin Coolidge and the lovely Grace. Enjoy. And farewell.
Could you just all imagine me as Buster Keaton?
Yes. Aside from her many friends, Steffi most miss Harold's Ice Cream, who wouldn't, and the Young at Heart Chorus. And I hope after braving the current airline situation that she's gotten a chance to sample it all. I've only known Steffi for a few years since I moved to Teaberry Lane at Lathrop Community, but I've come to love her honesty, her kindness, her zest for life, and her hilarious storytelling. Also, she introduced me to three fabulous things: Howling at Full Moons, Robin's inspiring writer's workshop, and her own wonderful writing, which you are very privileged to hear this afternoon. And Steffi.
Thank you, Susan, for that lovely introduction. Can I be heard? Am I being heard? Okay. I want to also thank Carol and Robin for doing these wonderful readings, which I fortunately can continue to watch and Zoom while in the wilds of Ohio. And I want to thank all of you for coming and joining here today, and what a delight it is to share my writing with you. I do want to say that what I wrote about is grimmer than I usually do. I'm very good at funny pieces and I like to make people laugh, but this has been something on my mind for a very long time. This is a much longer piece which I'm reading excerpts from, based on an experience I had in the 1980s as a consultant to a daycare program in a town which I will hope to keep disguised, but is it's rural poverty. And I saw it firsthand in a way that just has remained with me all these years. So I'm afraid I have to say that it may be a little grim, but Susan will leave you, I think, because she's going next, will leave you in a much better frame of mind, so you can look forward to some relief. Thank you very much, everybody. Whoops, no, wrong one. No, right one. Okay, thank you. This is called Love on the Edge, part 1. And I also want to mention, by the way, that I've disguised, whoops, yes, right, you have to keep in mind this. If I turn it this way, does that work better? Because then I have to look at this too. Okay, I have done my best to disguise the identities of the people mentioned in it, and I've tried to disguise the place, although some of you may figure it out, but anyhow. Love on the Edge, part 1. The Other Side of the Woods. Quote, "Poverty isn't a lack of character, it is a lack of cash." That's a quote from Rutger Bregman, who is a Dutch historian. Pine River. The trip took almost an hour. Once I got off the highway onto Route 33, I found myself navigating snaking, winding roads and going up and down hills with nothing but forest on both sides for the next 15 miles. The road for me ended at the exit to the town of Pine River, where my friend Lynn was the executive director of Pine River Behavioral Clinic, one of the very few services available in this former mill town. I was coming there for my first day on a job that Lynn had offered, well, in fact, begged me to take, as a consultant to a child care center that her agency ran. I was writing my doctoral dissertation and really needed a part-time job, so I agreed. The daycare is free, Lynn explained, for kids whose moms are on welfare and enrolled in some program, like school, job training, or a certified internship. They get a voucher from the state, we take the kids, and the state pays us. She sighed. You can't imagine the number of dysfunctional families here. We need you. Pine River was a poor, depressed town whose family court judge was kept very busy with cases involving domestic violence, unpaid child support, termination of parental rights, and the issuance of restraining orders. It had been a flourishing mill town in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, populated by Polish, Irish, and French Canadian immigrants, along with the old-timers of English and Yankee stock. Now, in the 1980s, the mills were long shut down and the town was barely hanging on. The route I had taken was the perimeter of a large state forest, whose many pine trees gave the town its name. In the forest, there were a few lakes. All of this isolated Pine River from its neighbors. The next town was a 15-minute drive, and the closest city more than half an hour away, with no public transportation to either place. I'd never actually been in Pine River itself, and it was a surprise to come upon it suddenly from the peak of a hill, where it looked positively quaint, nestled in the valley below. But as I descended the hill, I could see how the rundown houses reflected the hard-scrabble lives of their inhabitants. What Pine River did have in abundance was churches. My destination was the Congregational Church, where the daycare center was housed. Now, the second section was my initiation into the daycare, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to read it. I'll give you a quick summary here. I was greeted politely but with evident resentment by the staff, who, as it turned out, had never requested my help and didn't even know I was coming until the day before I arrived. But then while I was there, one of the little kids crawled up into my lap and promptly vomited all over me and herself. Having taught preschool for years, I was unfazed and endeared myself to the staff by being good-humored about it. When I left wearing a house dress that Allison, the head teacher, had found for me, it was clear that it would be okay with them if I returned. And that's how I got into Pine River and to the daycare. Part 2, the conditions of unconditional love. Quote, motherhood is love in its purest form, unconditional love, end of quote. And that's a quote from Revati Sankaran, an Indian actress and playwright. counting the ways to love. What does it mean to love your child? Mothers themselves talk about the joy and intensity of mother love, the enormity of being responsible for another human being. Poets wax eloquent about the innocence of childhood and the purity of maternal love. Psychologists talk about the importance of a secure attachment between mother and child. Lofty words all. But the vast majority of time spent rearing a child is not filled with joyful moments. It's distributed over often exhausting, sometimes boring tasks and activities. Love is complicated. Just as white contains all the colors on the spectrum, mother love is a similar amalgamation of all emotions. 17 of the 20 families in the center were single parent, with varying degrees of participation in family life by the fathers, an involvement which was not always welcome. I have no doubt that most of these mothers loved their children. What I had to learn is that although we like to romanticize mother love as being unconditional, life itself has endless conditions, and in Pine River, those conditions put many obstacles in the way of simply loving one's child. Part 3, living and loving on the edge, 2 stories. Quote, "The initial trauma of a young child may go underground, but it will return to haunt us." That's from James Garbarino, who's an author and a researcher on childhood trauma. Another quote, "Just because you don't love someone doesn't mean you don't love them." That's a quote from Novi Schamess, familiar name, right? Who is a fashion designer and an astute observer of human nature. The high price of clean overalls. "He can't play with us, he smells, and sometimes he's a baby, he stinks of pee-pee, and once he's poopy man, he poops in his pants." What to do with these frequent comments about Luke, the new kid in the class? Sadly, they were accurate descriptions of this thin, too small for his age, 3-year-old boy who was enrolled in this center on one of the vouchers for children who are under Department of Child Welfare supervision due to charges of parental neglect. He was brought on the bus, arriving in overalls, which had apparently been allowed to dry without ever being washed. It wasn't clear whether he was toilet trained, although he did seem able to use the bathroom appropriately when reminded and encouraged by a teacher. "I can't force the kids to play with him. He really does smell," Allison confessed. "I have trouble being near him for any length of time myself." She was on the verge of phoning the DCW, the Department of Child Welfare, but as always, reluctant to involve the agency, which solved most problems by placing the target children in foster care. I had an idea. "I'll drive over to the Carter's discount place and get some clean overalls for now," I offered. I was finding myself doing things on this job that I had not anticipated, but if new overalls would give a kid a better day at school, so be it. I came back with 3 pairs of Carter's Kids corduroy overalls and a packet of 4 little boy briefs with pictures of dinosaurs on them. Allison sent a note home with Luke, tactfully claiming that she had taken the clean clothing from a pile in the church's donation box. When Luke returned the next day, the new clothes were already in need of washing. In a few days, all of the new clothing was soiled. Allison asked if I would make a home visit with her. We came unannounced because the mother didn't have a phone. Lily Novak lived on the 2nd floor of a multifamily house in poor repair, known to be owned by one of the several unscrupulous landlords who blithely exploited single women who were living not just on the edge, but teetering dangerously over it. When Lily came to the door, barefoot and still in pajamas, even Allison gasped. She looked much younger than the 17 years she had put down as her age on Luke's admission form. Barely 5 feet tall, so thin she seemed to float rather than walk. Her shoulder-length brown hair was uncombed and her skin sallow. Even before we were over the threshold, we were assaulted with the familiar smell of urine. "What do you want? You from welfare?" Lily's words were defensive and suspicious. "I'm Luke's teacher at the daycare," Allison said, "and this is Steffi, my assistant, and we're here because we have some concerns about Luke." Lily flinched. "And no," Allison added quickly, "we're not from welfare. This visit is just between us." It was obvious we were not going to get any further than the entranceway, so Allison got to the point immediately. "We're concerned that Luke is wearing unwashed clothes every day, and he seems to have peed in them. He does know how to use the toilet. He's good about it in daycare." She waited hesitantly for a response from Lily, who remained stony-faced and silent. "We're just wondering if you would encourage Luke to use the toilet more at home and maybe wash his clothes a little more often. It's hard for him to make friends. They tease him because his clothes smell of pee." "Yeah, well, good luck. Half the time the frigging toilet ain't working," Lily said. "And you think I have a washing machine? The laundromat is 2 blocks away, and it costs money." "I don't think you'll get into trouble if you talk to your social worker about that," Allison said. "I'm sure those are the sort of things she could help with." "Yeah, well, I'll ask her," Lily lied. "Is that all?" Clearly, her already limited ability to tune in was fading fast. Visit over. "This isn't going to end well," Allison said, by which I knew she meant that she would eventually have to report all of this to the DCW social worker. "But let's give it a couple of weeks." "How do you take care of your child when you are yourself a depressed, probably emotionally abandoned child? When you are on your own with overwhelming responsibilities? When all the repetitive, tedious work that goes with caring for a child is made much more difficult by the circumstances in which you have to live? And when everything about your life confirms how uncared for and uncared about you are? Where does mother love come into this? Is there any place for it at all?" It was a surprising turn of events that made me realize anew how complicated loving care is. Allison's temporary solution was that we would each hand wash the soiled clothes and keep a supply of clean clothes available for Luke to wear each day. Everyone, all the staff people, took a turn as laundress for the day, and after a few days, the job expanded little by little into a semi-bath for Luke. Once he was undressed, it was easy to sponge him with soap and water before putting the clean clothes back on. It worked well until Allison was informed by the social worker that Lily had issued a complaint against her for sexual abuse. The complaint stated that Luke came home from school talking about how the teacher gave him a bath and even washed his willy. It would have been funny if it were not for the fact that the DCW scheduled a hearing to decide whether to charge Allison with the sexual abuse that was implied in Luke's unfortunate description of the activity. Allison didn't get off totally free. She was issued a warning for performing a personal action on a child without the mother's permission, but it could have been worse. Her solution, however, had succeeded in a way that neither of us would have anticipated. Luke's casual mention of his daily bath had galvanized Lily as apparently nothing else had. I can only guess what in her own childhood had triggered her insistence on the charge of sexual abuse. It had been quickly established that Luke was being sponged down in an open area where other staff members, parents, or DCW social workers could have entered at any time. But Lily had come to her own conclusion and remained firm that no one was going to abuse her child. Had Lily been abused herself as a child? Was she in some sense finally speaking up for herself as well as for Luke? That was all speculation, but something had motivated her enough to rouse her from her debilitating apathy and depression to take ownership of her status as a mother and become fiercely protective of her child. Love teeters on the edge, carries its baggage, but sometimes it comes through when it counts. Second story, the magic of numbers. Quote, sometimes the person you love most is also the person who hurts you. Anonymous. Dougie was a bright kid, curious and taking in the world sponge-like as we presented it to him. We saw it all too, his grin was contagious, mischievous, and full of pleasure. We saw it all too rarely, although he did have stretches of relative calm, often for several days, between his temper tantrums. Well, that's what Allison was calling them, but she and I both agreed that there was a lot more going on during those episodes. They'd always begin in the same way. A real or imagined slight from one of the other kids would set Dougie off in what appeared to be an irrationally angry outburst, but still within the range of normal. He would do the usual time out in Allison's office, always apologizing profusely to her while crying uncontrollably. One morning, Allison called me at home. I know it isn't your day to be here, but if you could come, it's Dougie. It was really bad. He was pounding Tony on the back, she said when I arrived, and he starts shouting, excuse my language, but this is what he said, really. Stuff like, you fucking cunt, and I'm sick of your shit, and shut up, bitch. It was scary. He made his voice growly, she said, like he was pretending to be someone else. She shuddered. Something's really wrong. I sat down next to Dougie in the office and waited silently. Suddenly he asked if he could show me numbers that he knew. Taking the paper and crayon I found for him, he slowly and carefully printed the numbers 1 through 10. When he finished, he held the paper up and flashed me that wonderful grin. The grin broadened as I acknowledged what a great job he had done. It's for you, he said, handing it to me. Then Dougie had another episode 2 days later. This time I happened to be at the center. And although Allison had forewarned me about the language, it was still very startling to hear those words coming from a 4-year-old. The other kids were still at the bathroom talk level, using words that had to do with their bodily functions and laughing loudly. But Dougie's language was not kid talk. I want to do my numbers, he managed in between sobs. He again gave me the finished paper, but surprised me by asking for another one, on which he very carefully wrote the numbers 911. Mommy taught me that. She showed me how to push the buttons on the phone. You have to do it just like that, 911. I wondered if this was just a routine precaution his mom, Melissa, was taking, or if it suggested that she was leaving him alone in the house. Have you called it? I asked. Yes, just like Mommy said. She said to do it if I could hear Daddy shouting and she was crying. When Daddy has a sleepover, sometimes he gets mad at her. And she said if she is crying loud and she keeps crying, I should call those numbers 911. So I did. I had thought I was over being surprised or shocked at anything I heard on this job, but this left me utterly stunned. Dougie, what happened when you called? I told the lady who answered to come to my house because my daddy is yelling and my mommy is crying. I know my address, he said, not without pride. It's 49 North Market Street. So I told the lady. And then what? A nice policeman came. Mommy wasn't crying anymore, and Daddy was, I don't know, I think he went to the bathroom. Mommy said I should go back to bed now, and she tucked me in. But I didn't go to sleep. But she didn't cry anymore that night. I alternated between being utterly appalled and just wanting to weep for this child who had to call 911 to prevent his father from what I wasn't sure. Rape, beating the mother up, I don't know. Has Daddy visited again, I asked. Yeah, he plays with me. He brings me toys. But Mommy won't let him have sleepovers anymore. Barbara, the assistant teacher, had recalled that as a young teenager, Melissa had been involved in a court case when her older sister had a serious breakdown, and in the course of her hospitalization revealed that their father and brother had been sexually abusing both her and Melissa for several years. And Neil, Dougie's father, came from a family known for its history of alcoholism and bar fights. Pine River had many families whose history of abuse and alcoholism went back generations. We had a parent meeting with Melissa, and surprisingly, Neil, who came also because Melissa asked him to. Melissa blanched at Allison's description of what had been going on. "Oh my God, I had no idea. He knows he's not supposed to use language like that. He was so proud that he knew his numbers." She turned to Neil, who looked miserable. "I hit a rough spot," he said abruptly. "I was drinking again. It's when I drink. I don't know what happens. I lose my head. I do stupid things, like those words. I used those words. The kids shouldn't be hearing them." He cleared his throat nervously. "I love my kid. I love her," pointing at Melissa. "I want to move back in. I want to be a good dad. I want to take care of Lissa. This time, I promise I'll really stop." Melissa stiffened. "He has a restraining order. He can visit with Dougie in the house if I'm home, but no sleeping over, and he can't move back in until he's been sober for 6 months." "I'm glad to hear that those things are under control," Allison said, "but I think—" "Oh, God," Melissa interrupted in a panic. "You can't. You won't take him away. You won't let them take Dougie away from me." Neil reached over and patted her on the back gently, a gesture which seemed to calm her. "Your case is already in the court system," Allison said. "It's out of my hands. I think as long as Neil doesn't violate his restraining order and stay sober, they're not likely to take Dougie. He's doing better, but he's still—" She paused. "He's still showing signs of the stress, and he needs help getting over it." Allison and I had shared our doubts as to whether Melissa and Neil had really understood the disturbing emotional implications of what they were putting Dougie through. "There are therapists at the clinic," I said, "who do something called play therapy with kids. We can arrange for Dougie to see one of them." Melissa followed through with the appointment for Dougie. Although he continued to be hyper alert and edgy some of the time, his episodes became much less intense and much less frequent. Neil stayed sober for a few more months, got a job painting houses, and kept to the terms of his restraining order. Then it was September, and Dougie joined the other kids who had reached the required 4 years, 9 months of age to go to the public school kindergarten. Allison had a little graduation for them, and Melissa and Neil came together, beaming with pride. Pine River was a small town. News spread easily. Allison heard that when Neil reached his target of 6 months of sobriety, he moved back in with Melissa. But then Melissa got pregnant, and he started drinking again. And this time, when he got violent, she suffered a miscarriage along with some broken ribs, a black eye, and a severe nosebleed. Dougie was removed from the home and placed with a foster family in a different town. The gossip died down, and we heard nothing more about them. Did Melissa and Neil love one another? I believe they did, as deeply and faithfully as each was able. Did they love their child? I believe they did, very much. And Dougie loved them. Against all reason, we can love the one who hurts us. We hold on as we need to the memory of how it feels to be loved and forget the pain that came with it, and so we go back for more. But love does not conquer all. The web of loving care that binds a family can survive trauma, can withstand rage, rejection, despair, but not forever. Each assault on the fragile threads sustaining the bonds of love makes a deeper notch, weakens the thread until it is frayed beyond its capacity for repair. Part 5, Leaving Pine River. Quote, "You get a strange feeling when you're about to leave a place. Like you'll not only miss the people you love, but you'll miss the person you are now at this time and this place, because you'll never be this way again." That's a quote from Azar Nafisi, who is the author of Reading Lolita in Tehran. I finished my dissertation, passed the defense, interviewed for a teaching position at a local college, and got the job. It was June of 1987, and it was time to leave. I was no longer the same person that I had been when I walked into the center, faced a defensive and sullen staff, passed an unplanned test by being vomited on by a 3-year-old, and began to muddle my way into the lives of the families of this isolated, marginal community. I marveled at the resiliency, the capacity for perseverance that these families had. I don't want to glorify or romanticize their lives. It was tough going, and the scars were deep. Love persists against great odds, but it isn't magic, and it isn't enough. It takes a village to raise a child, but a village where everyone is struggling is not a reliable support. And yet, at the daycare center, children played, built houses with blocks, painted dinosaurs at the easel, made pretend meals from Play-Doh, listened wide-eyed to stories, giggled, fought, made up, and managed to learn their letters, numbers, and colors before they went to kindergarten. The teachers at the center had infinite patience, inner resources, kindness, and affection to spare. Many of the parents, mostly the mothers to be sure, somehow found the emotional and physical energy to do what mothers in Pine River were supposed to do: find ways to feed and clothe their kids, teach them how to behave nicely, and above all, try to give their kids the love that too many of the mothers themselves had never experienced. I miss them all. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Susan, it's your job to lift the mood. I first got to know Susan when she moved in next door on Teaberry Lane at the Lathrop community in East Hampton. All of us who lived on Teaberry Lane considered it the best place to live in Lathrop. If you're ever thinking of going there, make sure you get onto Teaberry Lane. I became aware of her writing when she read one of her poems at a gathering of Lane residents for something. The poem was full of exquisite images and nuanced feelings. When I told her about Robin's Wednesday night workshops, she was interested in joining, and the rest is history. Susan's writing is deeply influenced by her childhood in Cape Cod, where she developed a lifelong love of the ocean and a wish to immerse herself in nature. As an adult living in and around Northampton, she has continued her connection to nature on hikes in forests, hills, and riversides. And although we do lack an ocean here, she's learned to love swimming in lakes. She has been writing since childhood, exploring many genres, but is particularly inspired by nature, love, and her thoughts about mortality and the divine. Her participation in both Robin's workshop and another one led by Burley Muten, have stimulated her to keep writing, and she says she realizes that she could happily spend the rest of her life doing so. It is a pleasure to be able to share with you the treat of hearing Susan read her thoughtful, elegant, and beautifully crafted work. Susan.
It is amazing to be following that beautiful. Do you remember when I was introducing Steffi and I said her honesty and kindness? You heard it in those pieces. I wouldn't call them grim. So thank you all for coming out to hear our reading. I'm excited to look out and see all of you. I'd like to thank Steffi for asking me to do the reading with her, because she made it sound like an adventure instead of a scary event. And so I said yes, thereby facing down a lifelong fear. I'd like to really thank Carolyn and Robin for arranging this and for hosting an amazing workshop space, a kind of fabulous incubator for creativity. I'd also like to give a shout out to Burley Muten, whose writing workshop first sparked me to write poetry and which continues to nurture my writing spirit. My first piece is Walking Meditations. My early morning walk meanders past a fenced patch of grass, where later I'll watch cherished dogs of varying ages romp with the abandon of creatures released of all restraint. What causes the jauntiness in my own gait, the swing of my arms, the set of my shoulders, the twitch of my lips as my mouth spreads into a grin? Am I overcome with delight at the sky, painted cerulean today, overlaid with static clouds, clouds applied by static wisps, clouds applied with nearly dry brushstroke? Do I sense the divine in melting notes of wood thrush? I can't rule out the effect of watching mists blur fields of budding goldenrod, thistles showing hints of purple, milkweed florets drooping under the weight of their own perfume. It could be the sight of dew glistening at the ends of pine needles, or bright red roses smashing through the monochrome of surrounding greens. Perhaps the prayer of gratitude that hovers on my lips for life, for beauty, for toothsome words, for skies and pine trees and leaf-shaped moths, for yellow parasol mushrooms and orange-striped caterpillars, for wild thornless blossoms, my cat's compact paws, my lover's soft brown eyes that gaze at me with love as I smile back at him, returned from my morning walk. This next is a poem I wrote in springtime. Listen to the love. On chilly spring mornings, chickadees chirp an extra syllable or two, while their avian cousins whistle specially composed songs. Listen to me, listen. I'm ready. Come live with me for a spring and summer. I'll be your monogamous lover and helpmate, a fine romance for a season, which could amount to a lifetime, who knows? For days now, the frogs have been broadcasting the same plea. Listen, listen, listen to me. I have territory, but mainly I'm horny. Just listen. Everybody wants to be heard. Fireflies flash bioluminescent Morse code to signal interest. Even earthworms cause vibrations in the soil. And when their mates show up, they entice with touch and taste. We have our own language, my love. Looks and gestures and touches. Our signals are the same. Listen, I love you. Love me back. And above all, listen. Thrush calls the morning to order. My walk begins with rapid patter, feet on pavement. But then, those liquid notes, crystal flute song floats, unseen murmurs of treetop air. I slow the pace to stroll. Breathe, deep and easy. No, for this one season of coupling, bearing, feeding, one constant, one insistent call will greet my morning. Gift from a creature unseen, oblivious to my presence, singing out a hymn to sweet survival. My pages are stuck together. On the deck. Jack naps in sunshine, paper folded on his lap. I write and gaze and contemplate, quiet companionship. I talk on and on. He nods, like a fisherman relaxed on a rocky shore. His hook dangles from the fishing line, bobbing and nodding in familiar waters. Catching on, then letting complicated concepts drift away on tides. He watches my face and smiles. I smile back, loving his smile. Oh, because of the disturbance. Jack is my husband. I'll just say that. Jack is my husband and my love. So anytime you hear love, it's Jack. Jack naps in sunshine, paper folded on his lap. I write and gaze and contemplate, quiet companionship. I talk on and on. He nods, like a fisherman relaxed on rocky shore. His hook dangles from the fishing line, bobbing and nodding in familiar waters. Catching on, then letting complicated concepts drift away on tides. He watches my face and smiles. I smile back, loving his smile. The next one is called Worship. Consider the pleasure, lolling on one's back in sumptuous summer grass, peering up into the bluest of skies, spotting shifting sailboats and sea monsters in those clotted clouds, clotted cream clouds. Can't leave out a word there. Consider the many sightings. Elvis's face in a pepperoni pizza. Mary, Mother of God, in the slippery shadows of a Spanish cave. Perpetually disappearing islands off the coasts of Ireland, Portugal, and Greece, which all gives rise to questions of origin. Is this penchant for patterns purposeful on the part of a creator, or on the part of random atoms floating in an airless vacuum? Because my brain sees patterns, and truth be told, my pleasure in the same, I choose to think of it all part of a scheme to get the credit, the acclaim, because who would go to all the bother, create a universe of black holes, dark matter, whirling galaxies, mysterious particles, caterpillars, octopuses, intelligent slime mold, and perplexing humans, and remain the bashful, self-effacing, anonymous donor of everything known and unknown? Why not step up, take on 1,000 names and faces, shapes and natures, and accept the acclaim, nay, even worship, if it pleases? Now, this next is a bit of prose, to take a little break from the poetry. This is the big book of getting old. Everything you wanted to know and way more. I'm going to be reading in the style of the synoptic table of contents, which were written in the style, which are written in the style of 18th and 19th century novels, in which the previews of plots were supplied to readers. And some of you may remember those. Older people will remember them. Chapter 1, Welcome to the Tribe. You're officially old. Section 1, How in God's name did this happen? When you're young or middle-aged, which I refer to as a global young, you never think you'll actually get here. You didn't want to get here, except for, the alternative. Section 2, the mysteries of aging. You feel so young. How could you be old? But there you are in the industrial lighting of a ladies' room, maybe at a highway rest stop, and you spot a stranger in the mirror. Oh my God, it's you. All those nearly invisible lines that you've noticed at home have morphed into full-on wrinkles. In fact, your face has begun to resemble one of those dried apple doll heads displayed on craft tables at state fairs. So cute, so amusing. Until this moment. Section 3, let's talk hair. Perhaps you're riding in the car with your 13-year-old nephew who says, "Aunt Susan, why do you have a long hair growing out of your chin?" You glance in the rearview mirror, and there it is, at least 2 inches long. So long, you are able to twist it around your finger and yank it out. And it won't be the last stray hair you find. And you have to wonder, how many people saw this horrible hair? I mean, has it been there for weeks, months? Equally disturbing, you might be in a meeting when someone leans into your personal space to say, "Susan, you look like someone in a Renaissance portrait." Before you can say, "Why, thanks," they continue, "Yeah, those ones where no one has eyelashes? What happened to yours?" What can you do but shrug, because you've wondered too. Have my eyelashes migrated to my chin? Chapter 2, the economics of aging. Trigger warnings ahead. Section 1, the boring bits. Section 2, the scary bits. Section 3, the super scary bits. Enough said. Chapter 3, health in aging. Section 1, so you thought you'd be healthy forever? Right up until you died comfortably in your sleep at 110? Section 2, did you expect to be one of those nonagenarians still hiking the Appalachian Trail and skiing double black diamond trails? Section 3, coming to grips with reality. Chapter 4, see, there's a bit of grimness. Chapter 4, the vital importance of friends. Section 1, how to avoid politics. Section 2, could you be a little nicer? Section 3, cultivating tolerance in case you outlive every single person in your friend group except that one annoying person. Chapter 5, love and sex. Section 1, yes, Virginia, there really is a sex life after 60, 70, 80, 90, we're not sure. Section 2, be flexible and creative. Get into those dirty fantasies, the kind that if you were Catholic would get you a pretty hefty penance back in the day. Section 3, be prepared to do it for yourself. Chapter 6, spirituality, a real nail biter. Section 1, taking it on faith. Section 2, is there an afterlife? Section 3, will it resemble a fun after party? Section 4, how do you ensure you won't get refused at the door by a saintly bouncer? Chapter 7, death. Don't skip this chapter. Section 1, did you actually believe you'd live forever? Section 2, you did, didn't you? Secretly. Maybe you ignored all the facts. Section 3, guess what? It's going to happen. Section 4, try to prepare for everyone's sake. Chapter 8, younger people. Section 1. Dealing with the generations below you when they, for example, condescend, sometimes with a loud sigh, especially when discussing/explaining technology to/with you. Section 2. Avoiding expressions of sympathy for the plight your generation is leaving them in. They don't need reminders, boomer. Section 3. Being happily surprised at the loveliness of the grands, those who think you're actually cool. Nana, love the socks with the Birkenstocks look. Chapter 9, bummer aspects of aging. Section 1, sad fact. You are no longer actually cool. That adjective belongs to another generation. Plus, at this very moment, your mind may be sliding over into ditzy old person, not cool. Section 2, there's not a damn thing you can do to regain coolness. Ship sailed. Section 3, you're no longer considered sexy either to most people, although you can remain hot to your partner or certain other tribe members. Chapter 10, biggest bummer of all. So big it needed to be repeated. Death. Section 1, see Chapter 7. You are going to die, and it's relatively soon, not in some hard-to-imagine distant future. Section 2, how long do humans live? 150? Grow up. Chapter 11, the bright side of aging. Section 1, when attending a wedding, it doesn't matter what you wear or do. People are just pleasantly surprised you're still alive or able to attend. Oh my God, it's Aunt Minnie. I thought she died. Section 2, in fact, on any occasion, you can dress as you wish. Color your hair aqua. Try going topless in summer. Hardly anyone will notice or care. Am I imagining it? Yeah, those can't be breasts. Are those ruffles or plastic bags, maybe? Section 3, wisdom. Hopefully you've gained some. Not everyone does, as you may have noticed. Section 4, and speaking of wisdom, you really should care about the earth. You know, pack in, pack out. Some people still have to live here long after you've set off in search of the after party. Section 5, but remember, if things get really, really dicey, well, thank God, you're going to die relatively soon. Okay, did I lift the grim? Now, today was No King's Day. Yay! I wrote this next poem at the start of things, and sadly, it's still relevant. Let me just pick it up. A public service announcement from the Statue of Liberty. Look at me, forever gazing out to sea beyond New York, that famous fictional harbor of welcome. Look, can you read the truth in my metallic face? I knew they'd use me for propaganda. Those huddled masses were never universally folded into the national bosom, not always fed with milk of honeyed breasts. They used my image to feel collectively better. Look at the words inscribed beneath my feet to soothe an uneasy consciousness. Look at truth squarely. Newcomers are taken in reluctantly, warily. And look at them, judgments already written in blood on faces, bodies. Look at me, expression righteous, my arm raised to shed a sanctimonious beacon to the wretched. But they were refuse, weren't they? Unless the lineage was pure. white, Anglo, superior, supreme. I am angry. I was meant to embody a goddess. Instead, I am a joke, taught as a straight line to innocent school children believing in a welcoming nation. Up until the point when newcomers, fleeing the results of our sins, show up with brown skins and accents, then I lower that beacon and construct prisons. Look at me. Now, look again. Sorry, grim. The loudest silence. The grave. Sorry. The grave contains the loudest silence, or else the deafening roar of grief creates that illusion. A person I know invited loss to cohabitate her body and mind as in their life. But souls choose their home. It's not the grave, nor is it coffin, nor living people's flesh. I'll choose sky and sea and grass and lichen, ride waves, float motionless with gulls, calling to strong winds. I'll face the waning moon, pellucid in the pale of an aqua morning. I'll dip into the sinking sun, striped sky in pink and purple, blaze in crimson glory. Perhaps my atoms, broken free, will wander through the silent space of universes yet unseen. This next is a poem that's kind of doubling as a bit of flash memoir. Flexible flyer. Widened eyes on sullen sky, breath sucked in hard and held, smell of snow and dampish air, ash-gray clouds heavy with promise. Elbows press on windowsills, chafed by chips of peeling paint, keeping watch in prayerful silence as lazy flakes fall relentless, numberless, speeding downward. Next morning's sun bursts through gauze curtains. My brothers and I leap eager from our beds to see the heaps and piles of snow. A chorus of begging begins. Can we go sledding? Please, please, please say yes. Shivering over hot air registers, we pull on warm socks, wool mittens, hats with ear flaps. Dad drags sleds up from the cellar, dented metal saucers, leather straps worn thin, and one glorious wooden wonder with red metal runners. Flexible flyer. Mine to claim first dibs as eldest. I pull it behind, saucers piled atop, quarter mile to golf course, meeting other groups and gangs of friends and family, only kids. Adults back home in bathrobes linger over coffee and cigarettes. As always, I start on the baby hill, getting the hang. I steer my sled around rolling bodies of the fallen, letting speed grow until I skim the surface, ending in a long, flat run. Run, race, hurry to the top and off to the big hill. At the start, I hesitate, shivering, savoring, contemplating. Should I sit or stand atop my steed? Ignore Bobby Hayden standing on his, holding reins lightly, one hand waving. I run, sled in arms, mighty leap, landing heavy. Patch of ice sends me hurtling straight, a railway line. I whistle as I pass Bobby's side-eye scowl. Sandra's guppy mouth gapes. Suzanne urges me on. Wind whips my hat into a spin, slaps my cheeks. Sled runners spit showers of snow crystals. I whoop. A cowgirl. A a jockey, a jet pilot, queen of air and ice and blue sky, speed demon, famous ace, best sledder of my grade. At the bottom, I pat my trusty flyer and laugh great clouds of misty glee. Only a few more. The new world. Before we slipped into a new world of halting gait and humbled minds, we thought the old world would stretch forever, or as far into the future as we could see, with eyes that were rapidly, secretly aging. Before we slipped into this new world, we strode with confidence in sturdy boots, toted binoculars, backpacks slung over shoulders. Now we dream of walks we won't take. In the new world, we stand slightly bent as though leaning into harsh wind, one foot in the present, one in the past. The future is hard to see with eyes blurred with overuse. But in the morning, when I roll into the warmth of your aged body, I know you're the companion I want by my side as we slip into a brand new world together. That was for Jack. And this one is too. I remember my first visit to that pond. Remember? You introduced me your favorite spot for tenting, warming soles of feet in flicker of campfire. We slipped underneath a sliver of moonlight, stood awestruck at water's edge, bare feet scrunched against sandy dirt. Silver ribbon rippled across the waves. Hand in hand we stood, pulses pounding, hearts were weaving, curling, curving patterns of love. At least I imagined it so that night on my first visit to that pond. Remember? A great loon raced silent toward us, black and white feathers, echoing the color scheme, pond in moonlight. It came to us so swift, determined, seemed to greet us, to carry a message or a warning. We both took one step back, remember? Did we fear the loon or flightiness of future memory? We never divined that meaning. I often turn it over like gathered shells or stones, piecing together a puzzle. Now, my heart beats hard. Old warnings sound from birds and ponds as puzzle pieces, scraps, illegible messages blow about, wafted by the wind. Only broken phrases left, meaningless symbols and feathers of memory ruffled by time to warm my soul and yours. Do you remember? Hungers. I hunger for spring's sweet succulence, the tender shoot, the promise of a bud, the silky petals of a tulip, sturdy, sunny daffodils. Squatting in the garden, the pull on my muscles, dirt pressing under fingernails. I hunger for the heat of summer, smooth, silent surface of pond at night, the tickle of a butterfly wing on outstretched hand, sticky spiderweb caught on my face in early dewy morning. I hunger for the excess of fall, tomatoes and peppers overflowing, squashes swollen and sweet, even the oak leaves decked in burnished brilliance. I am winter now, branches cold and bare, skin like discarded leaves, crinkled and dry, hair glistening with ice. And I don't care, I claim. My laugh is merry as I watch the wrinkles march across my face. But is my laughter slightly brittle, with a sense of clouds on unseen horizon, just over my left shoulder? Inside my winter soul, I hunger for the truths I see reflected in all other hungers. Universe spinning endless, reverberating cycles. Fibonacci patterns within patterns. The stars singing, it turns out literally, the songs of eternity, sating all hunger. And I'll finish up with this one. Late September. Some find September sad, flora dying, disappearing, sun pouting, sleeping longer, dank chill settling in the bones. I acknowledge the dreariness, bundle my body under layers of warmth, pull my hat over my ears, set out to observe. In the garden, hardier flowers still wave their colored flags atop graying stems. Late strawberries, rubies, hide beneath spotted leaves. In the forest, brief flashes of gold and crimson russet. Still, I mourn the losses, the greens darkly defiant, heady scent of sun-warmed pine cones dripping with diamond sap. Air nips at fingers and cheeks. Clouds hold warnings. Dew plays with crystalline concepts. Tears burn my eyelids. But when October sun blazes, illuminating flaming maples, brassy oaks, golden aspens, the whole world sings a hallelujah chorus. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Stephanie, Carol.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Steffi, so much for reading to us. What a just beautiful offering of so many delights and very thought-provoking pieces. Really appreciate it. And there's just nothing like a great audience if you're a writer or reading your work. So thank you all for coming out, and for those of you on the Zoom. Our next reading is November 22nd. Sally Belrose and Renee Schultz will be our readers, so come back for that. And if you'd like a schedule of the readings that will be here through the year and into the spring, there are blue sheets on that table. So pick one up and linger around to visit and have refreshments. Thanks so much.